Наши войска были у Киева. Да? Нам нужно туда возвращаться или нет? Я почему вот такой риторический вопрос задаю? Потому что ясно, что у вас-то ответа на это нет. Это я сам могу на него только ответить.
This is my video update from Nicosia, Cyprus on this Wednesday afternoon, June the 14th. Let's talk about some news, and let's start things off with a meeting that took place yesterday between Russian President Vladimir Putin and war correspondents, not only Russian mainstream media war correspondents, but also independent journalists as well. And Putin sat down with these journalists, and they had a type of Q&A session, and they talked about the conflict in Ukraine, of course, the special military operation, the NATO conflict with Russia, and the Russian president said some very interesting things during this Q&A session. He talked about Kiev. I thought this was an interesting exchange that Putin had with the journalists when they asked the Russian president about Kiev and future plans for the Russian military. Putin said, "Do we need to march on Kiev? Question mark. If we do, then we need mobilization. If we don't, then not." Putin added that there is no need to launch a new military draft campaign today, meaning that Russia is not going to be marching on Kiev anytime in the short term. Let's just leave it at that. Al Jazeera, they covered this Kiev exchange, and this is what Al Jazeera said. Discussing Ukraine's capital, Kiev, which Russian troops failed to take in the early stages of the war, the siege of Kiev, Putin asked, "Should we return there? Why am I asking such a rhetorical question? It is clear there is simply no answer to this. I can only answer it myself." So that is how Al Jazeera covered this Kiev exchange. And this is coming from RT. And they said, speaking about Russia's fundamental goals in Ukraine, the president confirmed that they remained the same and that the Kremlin had no plans to change them. Missions are adapted based on developments on the battlefield, he added. Putin also answered questions about Ukraine's NATO aspirations, and this is what he said. Once again, this is coming from RT. Putin referred to the late St. Petersburg mayor Anatoly Sobchak. Putin had served as Sobchak's deputy in the 1990s and once called the politician his mentor and friend. Quote, "Sobchak was a clever man. He was right to say, 'You want to leave? Leave. But leave only with something you had come with,'" the president told the military correspondents and bloggers. So when asked about Ukraine's NATO aspirations, and come middle of July, we're going to get a lot of news about those aspirations to join NATO, because that's when NATO is going to have their big Vilnius NATO meeting. When asked about Ukraine's NATO aspirations, Putin said, "You want to leave? Leave. But leave only with something you had come with." Quite an incredible statement from the Russian president. And if I was Zelensky, and if I was the Collective West and Stoltenberg and Joe Bidenopoulos, Greece's favorite son, I would be very worried about these statements from the Russian president. Let's see here. There were a lot of other interesting things that Putin said in this Q&A. Let me read you. Let me summarize some of the things that he said, and I'm pulling these points from Slaviangrad, the Telegram channel Slaviangrad. I'm pulling some of the points from RT, as well as some things that Putin said according to Al Jazeera. So let me just run through what I believe were some of the more interesting points that Putin made during this Q&A session. Let's see. Putin said that Lenin is being thrown off his pedestal in Ukraine and the fascist bandera is being placed in his place. He has been elevated to the rank of national hero, according to Putin. What is happening now in Ukraine will never suit Russia, Putin said. In Russia, there will never be anything neo-Nazi. Putin said that Russia is gradually and methodically demilitarizing Ukraine. He said that Ukraine's military-industrial complex will soon cease to exist at all. Summarizing the results of the first almost 10 days of the offensive, the Ukrainian offensive, according to Putin, the Ukraine military is suffering losses in the ratio of irretrievable losses to sanitary losses of almost 50 to 50. Putin also said that Russian casualties were 10 times lower than those of the Ukraine forces. Putin also said of all the losses, they are approaching an estimate that can be called catastrophic in terms of personnel. Talking about the destruction of the Kakhovskaya hydropower plant, Putin said, unfortunately, it thwarted the Ukrainian counterattack in this area. It would have been better if they had attacked. Here is exactly what Putin said. Unfortunately, this may sound strange, but still, unfortunately, this thwarted their counteroffensive in this direction, in reference to the destruction of the Kakhovskaya Dam. Why, unfortunately, Putin asked. Because it would have been better if they attacked there. Better for us, because it would have been very bad for them to attack there. But once the flood occurred, then accordingly, the offensive did not take place, the Russian president said. That is an absolutely amazing statement from the Russian president. It would have benefited Russia if the Ukraine military had attacked in that direction. It would have furthered their goals of demilitarization. That is an incredible statement from the Russian president. It almost implies that Ukraine blew up the dam in order to not attack in this direction and to preserve their forces in this direction, or as Shoigu said, in order to move their forces from this direction and send them to the Zaporozhye area. But an incredible statement from the Russian president. Putin also said that Polish mercenaries are fighting on the Russian border area and are suffering heavy losses. About the drone attacks on Russia, Putin said that the same happened in Syria. We quickly learned how to fight. The problem here is also solvable. And talking about casualties, the casualties of equipment, Putin said that the offensive has led to massive losses in personnel and material. For Kiev, Ukraine has lost at least 160 tanks and 360 armored vehicles, and the military hardware destroyed by Russian troops accounts for between 25% and 30% of all Western military equipment supplied to Ukraine, the president estimated. Quote, there are also losses that we do not see, which are a result of long-range, high-precision strikes, Putin said, claiming that Ukraine's actual losses are likely higher than the figures he had given. And now I'm going to read you what I believe to be the most interesting part of this Q&A, perhaps the most interesting statement that Putin made, and it has to do with the creation of a buffer zone. This is what Putin said. Russia will consider creating a sanitary zone, a buffer zone, on the territory of Ukraine in case the shelling of our regions continues. A sanitary zone will be created on the territory of Ukraine. Such a zone is needed in order to secure our regions. Work on this issue will soon begin. Once again, if you're Zelensky, if you're Joe Bidenopoulos, if you're Stoltenberg, you have to be looking at these statements from Putin, and it's not good. It's not good if you're these guys. Finally, Putin said, he also said this. He said, about Russia and Ukraine, we have a country, they have a regime. So the Russian Ministry of Defense, they came out today with an estimate of Ukraine's losses in the big counteroffensive, and they claim that some 7,500 troops have been killed or injured in failed attacks since June 4th, the Russian ministry has said. So since the start of this counteroffensive, which the Russian Ministry of Defense says is June 4th, the losses from Ukraine is 7,500 killed or wounded, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense. So Reznikov, the Ukraine defense minister, he told a French publication in an interview the other day that as this conflict started, right before the Zelensky regime started to secure tons of money and weapons from the collective West, Reznikov said that when he spoke with collective West officials, they told him, for now, before we give you weapons and money, we just want you for now to just kill Russians. That is what Reznikov told this publication. We asked, can we have stingers? Reznikov told Foreign Policy, not a French publication, Foreign Policy. Reznikov told Foreign Policy in an interview published on Tuesday, we were told, no, dig trenches and kill as many Russians as you can before it's over. People thought our victory was impossible. Now Reznikov boasted that Ukraine has been given Bradleys, Strykers, Abrams, Leopards, and more, and will soon be equipped with American-made F-16 fighter jets. So speaking to Foreign Policy magazine, the Ukraine defense minister said that the collective West told him, for now, just kill Russians while we think about what we're going to do next in this provocation and proxy war with Russia. An incredible admission from Reznikov, and then Reznikov was all happy about the fact that the Ukraine military has been given drones and tanks and Bradleys and all of these things, and soon F-16s. And I read a report today saying that Ukraine is now going to be contacting Australian officials, and they are going to tell Australia to hand over F-18s as well. So that is what Reznikov told Foreign Policy magazine. And we have the news, big news, from the Wall Street Journal. They claim that Washington is also set to provide Ukraine, along with the Abrams tanks, they are going to provide depleted uranium rounds. A desperate move from the collective West, a move made out of panic, in my opinion, but also a despicable mood as well. And what it shows is that for the collective West, in my opinion, for the collective West, it really is about destroying the lives of Russians. And I don't only mean citizens of the Russian Federation. I mean Russians, people who speak Russian or are part of the Russian culture, the Ruski Mir, whether they live in Russia or Belarus or Ukraine, anywhere they are in the world. This is ultimately about destroying the lives of Russians. So in the beginning of the conflict, NATO was just more upfront. The collective West was more upfront with the Zelensky regime. hold tight. We'll think about what we're going to do, give you weapons, whatever. For now, we're not going to give you anything, but just kill Russians. That's what they told the Minister of Defense, according to the Minister of Defense, his words. And now we've reached the stage, after a year and a half, we've reached the stage where the collective West is now saying, the United States and the UK, they're now saying, you know, let's just provide depleted uranium to Challenger tanks, to Abrams tanks. This depleted uranium is going to be for the Abrams tanks that they claim will be delivered, I think they said, sometime around August, September, October. Anyway, they're now just coming out and saying, you know, depleted uranium, if we can't win this conflict, if we can't control Ukraine, if we can't destroy Russia, then let's poison it. Oh boy. So let's shift gears a bit. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about, you know, I want to go down there. That's where I want to go. So let's go back on the bridge. Let's take the steps down. Let's talk about Nord Stream, because we have an article in Politico with the title, and this came out yesterday, CIA warned Ukraine not to blow up Nord Stream, report says. Let me just stop right here before I walk any further, and let me just read you what this article says. The CIA warned Ukraine not to destroy Nord Stream months before an attack on the gas pipelines after receiving a tip from Dutch military intelligence, according to media reports. The Netherlands Military Intelligence Agency, the MIVD, received information about an imminent attack on Nord Stream from an unnamed source in Ukraine in June, 3 months before a series of underwater explosions hit the pipes last September. A joint investigation by Dutch and German news outlets published Tuesday shows. According to the plan received by MIVD, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, General Valery Zaluzhny, was in charge of the operation against Nord Stream, which involved a small team of divers traveling on a sailing boat and was supposed to take place mid-June 2022. The Dutch intelligence services then informed the U.S., who made contact with Ukraine via the CIA to warn them of, the reports say. To warn them off, sorry, the reports say. To warn them off. So, let's see. The Dutch intelligence services then informed the U.S., who made contact with Ukraine via the CIA to warn them off, the reports say. So the CIA controls Dutch intel. U.S. intel controls Dutch intel. U.S. intel controls Ukraine intel. And Politico is saying that U.S. intel received a tip from Dutch intel, which they control. So basically U.S. intel sending a tip to U.S. intel, and then U.S. intel warned Ukraine intel, which is basically U.S. intel, because U.S. intel runs Ukraine intel. So U.S. intel warned U.S. intel, CIA intel warned CIA intel about Ukraine. No, not Ukraine, Zaluzhny, about Zaluzhny blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. Is that right? Do I have this right? Who makes this stuff up? Who makes this stuff up? Oh, man. The scapegoat of Kiev, General Zaluzhny, if he's even around, who knows? The scapegoat of Kiev. So how did all of this go? I'm just curious. How did the script writers come up with this story? About 2-3 months ago, they started to float ideas about Ukrainians blowing up Nord Stream, anti-Putin Ukrainians and Russians blowing up Nord Streams, Andromeda yachts blowing up Nord Stream. The other day we had Poland blowing up Nord Stream. So we have all of these stories floating around about Nord Stream. And of course, no one is talking about Biden or Newland or the hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea, Mr. Ted Cruz, or anything like that. No one's talking about that. So we have all of these stories, but nothing is gaining traction, right? The New York Times article, I think it was the New York Times article, where they said that it was pro-Ukrainians or anti-Russian pro-Ukrainians, whatever, that blew up Nord Stream, but they didn't really say how. And then the next day, or the same day, we had the German Andromeda story that was floated out. So we had all of these stories floated out there, but nothing was gaining traction. Like, I mean, nothing. And what is this? And now, enter General Zaluzhny. No, not enter General Zaluzhny. So none of these stories are gaining traction. And then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks ago, the news comes out that the Russians hit an area where allegedly Commander Zaluzhny was at, and he was either killed, but most likely injured. And injured to the point of he's out of the war. That's it. He has to get taken to a Ukraine hospital, a hospital in Kiev, and he's in trouble, right? That happened like 2 weeks ago. So I imagine that the script writers, they probably convened a meeting and they probably said, guys, Zaluzhny has just been taken out by the Russians. He's in a Kiev hospital, so he's done for this conflict. Those are the reports that we're getting. So listen up, everybody. I've got an idea. Remember those stories that we ran about Ukrainians blowing up Nord Stream and Andromeda yachts? And everyone that's sitting around the big table in DC or London or wherever the scriptwriters are, Hollywood, they're all sitting there and they're saying, yeah, I remember those stories, you know. No one really believed them. No one paid attention to them because, you know, we have Joe Biden and Newland and Blinken saying that they blew up the pipeline on video. We have them on video. And probably the head scriptwriter said, yeah, I know. But what we can do now is we can pin the blame on Zaluzhny. That's what they said. We can pin the blame on Zaluzhny, guys. And the best part about pinning the blame on Zaluzhny is that, from what I understand, Zaluzhny is against the big counteroffensive. He's kind of fighting with Zelensky as well. So, you know, we solve a whole lot of problems here. And I'm sure the scriptwriter said, dude, that is an awesome idea. Let's do it. So let's provide a cover for Zaluzhny. Let's find an actor. Let's find someone that looks like him. Let's put him in a science fair in Odessa, and let's create a video and have him, you know, say, you know, hey, what's up, everybody? It's Zaluzhny here, and all of this stuff. And let's say he was at his brother's wedding as well, or his best friend's wedding for like 3-4 days, wherever he was. So a wedding of his best friend for 3-4 days as well. And then slowly, or quickly, we'll pin the whole Nord Stream thing on him. And that's what they did. Oh, boy. This is just coming off the top of my head, everybody. I'm just kind of, you know, I'm thinking out loud here, and we're having a discussion and a dialogue. But, you know, I don't have any type of information that claims this is what happens. But why not? Why not? Oh, boy. That's probably how it went down. So isn't it convenient that at the end of the day, the whole Nord Stream thing will be Zaluzhny acting outside of of the orders of Zelensky. Zelensky was not in the know of any of this. He had no idea this was going on. Zaluzhny and a couple of military officials and soldiers that were reporting to him, they're the ones that came up with the whole Nord Stream thing, and there you have it. And Dutch intel got wind of this, and they sent a report to the CIA, and they said, Mr. Burns, we just got some news that Zaluzhny and his team of soldiers, they're going to blow up Nord Stream. And Mr. Burns said, really? Well, that's interesting. Let me call up Ukraine and tell them, hey, Ukraine, this is Mr. Burns. And I just want you to know that our friends at Dutch Intel, they tipped us off at the fact that Zaluzhny is going to blow up Nord Stream. And Ukraine said, oh, my God, we got to call this off. We got to figure out what's going on. This is terrible. That's how it all went down. That's what they want us to believe. Oh, boy. All right. The scapegoat of Kiev, everybody. The scapegoat of Kiev, Mr. Zaluzhny. So Macron, this is like a pre-clown world. Let's call this a pre-clown world. Macron, he's trying to get invited to the BRICS summit in South Africa. Pre-clown world. Macron is looking for a BRICS summit invite. He's been trying to get in touch with Putin now for a while, and he just can't seem to get through. And now he's trying to crash the BRICS party. Macron is panicking. Macron is absolutely panicking. He's losing his cool. He is losing his cool because he sees what's happening in the offensive. He sees that it's a disaster, and he's losing his cool. So he's trying to, I imagine he's trying to get in touch with Putin to try and sell him on a Minsk 3 or something like that. No doubt about it. So now he's trying to join the BRICS summit. French President Emmanuel Macron has asked South African President Cyril Ramaphosa for an invitation to the upcoming BRICS summit in Pretoria. French newspaper L'Opinion reported on Monday Macron's recent attempts to win over his African counterparts have fallen flat. He raised the possibility of attending the summit during a phone call with Ramaphosa earlier this month, L'Opinion stated, citing sources in the Élysée Palace. So if Macron were to be invited to the BRICS summit, I think it would be the first time you had like a G7 collective West leader actually attending a BRICS summit. But Macron, he wants to go to BRICS because he's worried. He is worried about what is happening in Ukraine, because Macron has been one of the collective West leaders. At times, he says good things, but he says logical things at times. But he's been one of the collective West leaders that sometimes he talks logic, but his actions are destructive. And his actions are those of placing your entire political future, all of your political capital, placing that bet on Zelensky, and boy, has it backfired for Macron. So let's do a clown world, and we can wrap this video up. And in this clown world, we have an article from Bild, and this article from Bild is also a bit panicky, let's say. The Germans are in a bit of a panic mode. Now, this is German, obviously, so I'm not going to read you what the title says, but from what I understand, it said, Russians now fighting in our tank. Bild discovered that Leopards began to replenish the Russian trophy fund and entered a new stage of despair. Now the Germans are afraid that Putin will enter Kiev on a Leopard. So if we use Annalena Baerbock logic, right? If we use Annalena 360 logic, that means that the The tank was German. It was a German Leopard. Then it became a Ukrainian Leopard. And now it's a Russian Leopard? Is that correct? using Annalena Baerbock logic? Oh boy. So it's a Russian Leopard. No, nothing to worry about, Bild. This isn't a German Leopard. This isn't even a Ukrainian Leopard. This is now it's a Russian Leopard. Forbes actually ran an article about the leopards, and they actually said that Russia is destroying not German leopards. They said Russia is destroying Ukrainian leopards. So Forbes, they got the memo, and they're appeasing Annalena Baerbock. And they're saying that Russia is destroying Ukrainian leopards. All right. So that's the video, everybody. theduran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, and Rockfin. Go to the Duran shop, 10% off. Use the code GOODDAY and check out our summer giveaway as well. You can find all the information on the Duran shop's Instagram page. Link is in the description box down below. Take care.